Happy Tuesday and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Rocketeer Minute, where each and every day, Monday through Friday, we've been going over 1 minute of the greatest adventure movie Walt Disney's ever made, the 1991 Joe Johnston-directed feature, The Rocketeer. I'm one of your hosts, Jim O'Kane of TVDads.com.
And I'm Hal Bryan, an airplane nerd from the Experimental Aircraft Association here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And Jim, we're down to the wire, minute 107. And how exciting is it to welcome back somebody who actually worked on the picture, our good friend Amy Young from ILM. Amy, welcome back.
Hey, how are you? Good to be back.
Thanks for coming back. It was we had a great time last week when you were on, and now we're back for more. Even though we're looking at a bunch of names, but I know these names probably have more meaning to you because you've worked with a lot of them that are up there.
Yeah, I look at these names and I see friends and I see family, and I see just the experiences we've had together. It's great. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And
this minute starts right there with special visual effects by Industrial Light and Magic, which I still think is one of the best names for a company I think ever. I think that is just a watershed moment in branding or company naming.
And one of the best logos too. I mean, their logo their logo looks like it should be on the side of a Sopwith camel.
Their logo is a guy who worked there for many years. His name is John Berg, and that's actually him.
Oh,
is it really?
Yeah. And there have been different people through the years who have come dressed up as that logo for Halloween parties. I mean, like company Halloween parties.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
And the other, the cog is like for the film cog, but they also used to be, the company used to be called Kerner Optical, or the Kerner Company. There are different, before and after that they used that, because the place where ILM was up here in San Francisco, was on a street called Kerner Boulevard, and it used to be an optical company that was there in the place, so they just kept it on the door.
Oh. Well, that was pretty penny saving.
Yeah, well, it was a way to hide, It was a way to hide from the public, because it's in an industrial area,
I met some of the showrunners for The Simpsons once in Santa Monica, and where they were doing the production for a new show that they were doing called Mission Hill. It was another animated feature. They were so worried about people showing up and trying to swipe their animation cells and stuff like that. There was absolutely no signage on the door. I mean, it looks like the place was closed. And if memory serves, the front office where the reception desk was, they left that empty with like loose papers laying around so that it looked like the place had been abandoned, and basically the whole company came through the back door.
Wow.
And it was clever because it took me about a half an hour just to find a place, and thinking, is this the right place? So anyway, it turned out okay because I got the interview with them eventually.
Wow.
Wow. So here we've I always wondered how Industrial Light and Magic, I mean, I guess they get approached by, would the director approach them, or would the producers approach them? How would they, do you know anything about how they start off a process of, by the way, we need you on this film?
My understanding and generalities here are that I don't know if it's the director or the producer, but basically the whoever is producing it, the company, like let's say Paramount, will come to ILM, and they might go to other effects companies, which there didn't used to be as many, but now there's a ton, and you have to bid for a contract, basically. They'll say, we have 60 shots, and we'd like to, give us a pitch, how you're going to do them, and how much it's going to cost. Mainly it's about money. How much is it going to cost? And they might go with that, or they might negotiate for them to have fewer shots, and have another company do the other scenes. So that's how that happens.
Oh. Would somebody pitch it like Ken Ralston? Would he pitch it, or would Ed Hirsch do that because he was the project manager?
I'm not sure who does the pitching, but I can't. I can't see Ed Hirsch doing it. Ed Hirsch is more project manager. I'm not really sure what else that job title should entail, but he was mainly our stage manager. And that's how he was the project manager. He, and in fact, he's listed as stage manager on some of his stuff. And he started out as a stagehand, a technician. And Ed's been around a long time, since the beginning, nearly the beginning, original Raiders and all that stuff. But somebody like Ken would do it for sure, and probably also the executive, maybe. In this case, during that time, Rocketeer, it was Jim Morris.
So somebody, in the front
they might go together.
Yeah.
I really don't know. It makes sense that the visual effects supervisor would definitely be involved in that because he can describe the vision of what it's going to take.
He does all the hand waving. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then there's the visual effects producer as well. But I don't know that they would be involved on the front end of getting it.
Yeah, and in something, especially with a Joe Johnston picture, I would think that Joe would probably pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Ken, can you do me a solid? What can you do for me with this?"
Exactly. I mean that's very true. So because Joe was in house, he's born and bred at ILM. Sure, that would be true. It's just kind of a natural. Well, of course we're going to do it at ILM. But then as directors through the years had worked at ILM, they always want to go back. So there's that too.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that production companies sometimes would kind of argue that just because of the money involved. So anyway,
Amy, I noticed looking through the credits here that Ken Ralston is credited as visual effects supervisor, but then he's also one of 2 second unit directors. Is that common, or is that in a case like this where so much of the second unit action was effects related that he just sort of fell into that role?
Yes to both. That's probably why. Because, for instance, I think I sent you guys a photo of the top and the tail section on set, and we were filming some smoke going across the top and things like that, and Ken is in that picture. And it just happens naturally. I never really even thought about who's directing, or who's doing what. But Ken would be there, and he's calling the shots. And if Joe was there, they're doing it together, although it's Joe's ultimately. Yeah, so that's why that happens.
Now, would Joe have been around watching some of the effect shots that you were doing, or any of the pyrotechnics? Was he around for that?
Yeah, he was. He was around for a lot of it, but I honestly can't tell you exactly. My memory fades on which one. I mean, if he was there for, there were shots that we did on the main stage where there were just pieces of the Zeppelin that we'd set on fire, and then we'd film that. And I remember him coming in and consulting about that. I'm a little vague on the memory, but he's been there. He'd be there for some things, or he'd if he had to go, he would check everything out and say what he wanted and go. But he was pretty hands-on, from my recollection.
The role of a producer at ILM versus the role at Disney. Patricia Blau was the producer at ILM for this part. She was kind of the money lady. She'd be following, making sure that you're all in budget, and she's the one
Patty
that shakes her fist at Ken and says, "Knock that off."
Yeah, Patty Blau. She's one of my good friends, actually. I have so much respect and admiration for her. She started as a receptionist at ILM back early days, and then she started working as a production coordinator. So for instance, she'd be the one to say, well, Disney, we think that you should buy that you should pay to have a second blimp built, just in case something happens. So she did.
And did they listen? No.
We know how that turned out.
Yeah. So that's what the visual effects producer does. Sure, she's
the one that makes the call.
And it watches the budget. Right, it watches our budget. Yeah.
No, that's good. Wow, it's just it's. I'm sure, and of the people that get listed in the credits, there are probably dozens behind them that don't get a line.
Well, like me.
Like you. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and it's changed over the years. I mean, a long time ago, films, nobody got credited, just the director and just a few people. We're talking in black and white films. And then
and now John Williams now has to write an extra couple of stanzas at the end of the theme, just like it fit.
Yeah,
by the time
I know.
you get to animators and everything.
Everybody, and out of respect, I've always sat there until you watch the bug at the end, and you see it's the end of the film, the Union bug and all that. But
it's funny. I've always done the same thing, even before the sort of modern era of after credit scenes and everything becoming de rigueur. I've just always felt like, I'd love to meet any of these people and shake their hand and say thank you.
Yeah.
If I like the movie enough.
Yeah. I mean, out of respect. But, everybody's getting credit now, even production babies. There's people, because some of especially the animated films, they take such a long time to make that babies are born, during the production. But there's usually they just, for instance, down the line where they have, I printed this out, where they have the chief model makers. That's it. They're the chief model makers. And where they have the key stage technicians. Those are the key stage technicians in charge of each department. And there's a bunch of people who worked underneath them. So, which I was.
Yeah,
one.
I can't believe that they did the whole movie with 2 PAs. That doesn't sound right.
No. And one of those, was he a PA on this? Yeah, David James. He was a really good friend. We had a lot of fun together. Big Star Trek fan too. He wrote the film G-Force. Do you remember that?
Oh.
With the gerbils and the
Yeah, it was a while ago.
He went into, he did really well at ILM, and he got into producing. So he does mostly visual effects producing, but it was funny, I didn't know that for the longest time, and then I saw it and I said, wait a minute, David James wrote that? Is that my David James? So yeah. So we have multi-talented people.
Wow. Back when I was doing my TV Dad's website, I would go on a lot of different sets on TV shows. They usually hired, the production assistants are usually unceasingly nice, and they're always very, very pleasant and very I'm trying to think of a word. They're just very welcoming. They're very always making sure that everybody's happy.
Mm-hmm.
And my son at the time was, oh gosh, he must have been like a freshman in high school, and he'd go with me on a couple of these set visits, and he always would want to go over because the PAs were always very nice to him while I was doing an interview. And they're like, can we get you anything? Would you like to go to the craft service table and get something? And he said to me, he goes, I want to be a PA when I grow up. I said, well, you got to understand, you're going to deal with a lot of people who are in a very bad mood, so you have to be that nice to do these things. So it's a tough job. I mean, it's an interesting job, but it is a difficult one.
Oh, I've been a PA.
Set.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of you're running around like crazy, especially if you're working for a really bad company. It's not good. It's not good.
But it's always fascinating seeing these things. I forgot there'd be so many rotoscopers on this, but back in the day, it was a mechanical operation rather than something you could do with a computer or let the generate.
I mean, there's still rotoscoping, but by definition, but it's done on computer. Back then, it was literally animation put onto the film. So that's like. Last time we talked, I was saying that the scene where Timothy Dalton is flying and the backpack blows up, that's animated. That's rotoscoping, So and there's a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays there's so many automated things. I use Adobe After Effects all the time, and the rotoscoping on that is you just draw a thick green line and then let the computer figure out where all the edges are for the next 10 seconds or so. And it's a whole different world nowadays, but still, there's people that know how to do this by hand, and it's great that they're still
and that's why I think it's really. I think film history wise, I mean, I know there's film history classes, but I think just as much as we educate in other areas, people in film education, people should know this film wasn't made with computers or whatever you're watching. That's older. You have to tell them and explain it to them. This was done by hand.
Yeah. No, a lot of people still think that, films are made by having somebody point the camera at actors while the actors say their lines and the movie just happens. And it's the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
It's a 2-hour movie. It took 2 hours to shoot.
Yeah, right.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Oh, it's painstaking. That's why you have to enjoy the people you work with, or it can be a real drag because it's long hours. It's very hard work. Very hard. Wow. But fun if you have the right crowd.
As you're looking over all these names, we've talked about a couple of these people. Can you pick a name at random and just tell us something unusual about them while they were working?
Okay, let's see. I'll just use my finger and let's see. What do I want to? I say okay. Well, I'll do this for a few. Okay, going down the list. Okay, Tim Eaton. His wife wound up teaching my kids.
Really?
There we go. Yeah.
Well, there's a crazy small world.
Small world. It was like years later, and Miss Eaton, and like, oh yeah, I used to work there. Yeah, my husband Tim works. Oh my goodness. Okay. Tom Bertino. Tom Bertino was a good friend. We were there. He loves. So he's an expert in animation, and he loves all the old cartoons, like 1930s.
Oh, yeah, like Fleischer
really
Brothers
old
stuff, that kind of, yeah.
Yeah, he loves the old cartoons.
Yeah. As a rotoscope supervisor, he's credited here. You pretty much have to love the old Fleischer stuff.
Yeah. And I remember, and I still have today. He gave me 2 or 3 of those old plastic. Toys. I told him that I liked Goofy out of the Disney characters, and so he gave me some of those, and I still have them around. But he now he's the director of animation. I think graduate department at the Academy of Art in San Francisco.
Wow.
That's what he does now. He worked on Roger Rabbit, Mask, stuff with animation. It was really fun.
Roger Rabbit. There's another podcast I could do minute by minute, Jim.
I'll listen to you. I'll listen to you now.
You'll listen to it? Okay.
There's a lot there. Now let's see. Steve Gawley. Now Steve Gawley's the man. He was the supervising model maker, as listed here. So he looked over everything and then got his hands dirty on some of the stuff. Steve Gawley is one of the original employees from Van Nuys days when they started Star Wars. In fact, he and Joe Johnston were college mates and friends, and that's how they got started. Joe would draw the designs, and for the ships, they'd make them and paint them. So Steve has been around that long. He's really an incredibly talented person. If I'm recalling correctly, he really likes trains. He's good with trains and cars. He had his hands in on making the. He supervised making the train for Back to the Future 3. He and another model maker who was also on this list, Ira Keeler, made the DeLorean car for the Back to the Future. And what else was I going to say about Steve?
Star Tours. He did Star Tours from what I'm reading here for Disney.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he was the voice of Red Leader at Star Tours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's fun. He did a lot of Raiders of the Lost Ark models. He created the ghosts that are at the end that you see coming out. Those were actually models.
Yeah.
He did the Death Star.
He worked on blowing up the Enterprise with you, didn't he? With Search for Spock?
Search for Spock, I didn't do that one. I did the Generations.
Right. Oh,
that blow up.
Yeah, that one.
So yeah, he did that, and he had his hands in everything. So for Rocketeer, yeah, he was supervising all of it. But the Zeppelin was the big thing, and pretty much everybody worked on that.
And he worked with you on Backdraft.
Yeah. I don't remember, I don't remember the models on that. I remember being on top of the roof of the main stage and filming some stuff, but I don't remember a lot else. I don't know why, but anyway. So, yeah, Steve is a giant. Literally, he's very tall. And he's just remarkable and a very nice person, really nice. And he made the jetpack for the puppet.
Oh, really? Oh, the maquette, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and if you don't mind my skipping through some of these names, I could jump over to Richard Miller, who I actually talked to today. I keep in touch with Richard. Richard was a model maker who came to ILM for Return of the Jedi, specifically to create Princess Leia's slave costume.
Wow.
Really?
Yes, because
he's the
Howard Hughes of his day.
A lot of
yeah,
a lot of pubescent men in the early 80s, isn't he? Jeez.
Yeah, so he was teaching at the local community college, and another chief model maker, supervisor person by the name of Lauren Peterson knew him. I don't know if he was taking his class or what he was doing, but he was teaching a sculpting class, and he was invited to come do that. And I can see why now that it's designed that way. I've seen some of his personal artwork, his bronze statues, and they have a lot of this like sweeping, like vines wrapped around them. Anyway, but Richard did a lot for the Rocketeer. I mean, he's done a lot everywhere. He created a lot of the animals for Jumanji. He did the whales for Star Trek 4. He actually says that was his favorite that he did. So he worked on the Zeppelin too. Like I said, everybody did. But he did the 18-inch Rocketeer puppet. And he also made the, what's his name, who was the clown?
Oh, Malcolm.
Malcolm, yeah. So he created that, and he also created the Charles Lindbergh thing.
Oh, Lucky Lindy.
Oh, the statue.
Yeah. So there was just like a pallet of dirt or something, and this thing was going to get dragged across it. Just because we see him put the pack on it, but then, it takes off, right?
Yeah.
So, and it crashes. He worked on the glass ceiling that was in the South Seas Club.
In the South Seas Club, okay.
That was kind of weird. We were talking about that, and he got into talking about the ice sculpture too, which nobody here made. So one of the things that he explained to me a couple of times is that a lot of the stuff was already made in LA. And so, for instance, the helmet was made by somebody else.
Right. That was our Friday guest, Jim, was on, and he had talked about building that with, I've forgotten the name of his company. It's, I can't remember the name. Yeah, they had designed the helmet and a couple of other things, the rocket pack, the X3.
Yeah. I mean, but they had to make more.
Yeah. And they weren't a union shop, so they turned it over to ILM, and then that's where Disney was dealing with that.
Right. And then Richard so he created some more helmets as needed, but also from that created the miniature helmets for the puppet, and so he did a lot there. But the glass. But we were talking about the glass ceiling because we were both trying to remember exactly how it was done. There was painting, there was animation. It was partly animated. I talked to another person who's on this list, Loring Doyle. He was an animator, and there were some shots of it breaking where we just basically had a pane of glass, that we would break. And I don't recall if any of it was painted or if they just tried to put those shots together. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like an overlay, like they had just dissolved into it.
Yeah, and then Richard brought up the snail ice sculpture. He said in his experience, he noticed, even though this isn't something that ILM did, he noticed that there were lines on the snail ice sculpture where it had been joined together in chunks. And I was like, well, yeah, I think that's how it's done. And he said, no, he's learned how to do it. So you get no lines, and so you get no bubbles. You make a mold, and you, while it's setting, you keep the water flowing, and with, a tube, and then it sets up, and it's all one piece.
So he's been watching it a minute at a time too.
I know,
for
really.
his own reasons.
Yeah.
When you talk to him, and when you talk to any of these people that you've worked with, I know at least once or twice you've mentioned that you're doing this podcast. What are people's reactions?
Well, first I was like, okay, I hope I'm saying the right thing. Do I want to tell people I'm doing this? I hope I'm remembering everything right. So it's a little bit of like, cautious. No, one of my friends, for instance, who worked there, was just like, no, you're being honest and true and telling it how you remember it, and you got some good stories, and sure, it's fine. Have fun with it, as long as I'm not dissing anybody, right?
Yeah,
or telling any deep, dark secrets. So I may be getting a couple of things wrong, but it is how I remember things. So
Well, it's more than 25 years ago.
I'm
not sure what I was doing 25 minutes ago, just when we started recording.
Yeah, it's just the only thing we want to make sure is we're not upsetting anybody at ILM, and they'll talk to us in the future.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I did ask a couple of people. I said, what do you think if I do this? And, like, for instance, I asked about the blimp story. I said, is it okay if I tell that story? I think most people know it. And they said, yeah, and it's old news by now. Just don't worry about it.
Yeah, and there's different people at the helm at all the different companies, so I don't think anybody's around to care. It's
yeah. Some people have moved on. I mean, Ken Ralston is with Sony ImageWorks, I think now.
Yeah.
Jim Morris, who was our executive, he was the president of ILM from 1994 to like 10 years, and to early 2000s, and he's at Pixar now. So
yeah, it's all a big shuffle, but they're all doing the same thing, and they all sound like they're still doing things that they love. This is definitely a labor of love. For everybody involved.
Definitely. Let me see other lists. Yes, go ahead.
I know I had sent a couple of questions for you for Ken, but I'm sure that Ken hasn't had a chance to
No,
get back to you.
I haven't had a chance to get in touch with them.
It's fine. Well, we can, if not here, we can post it in another medium like Twitter or our Facebook sites. But we'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you know.
Like I've been saying all this past week, minute 109, which is coming up the day after tomorrow, will not probably be our final episode. So we will probably have infrequent updates.
I keep saying you should do the Rocketeer Minute Revisited.
Revisited.
Yeah,
The next generation.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've talked about it on so many episodes. You've talked about having a reunion that I am insistent that you have a reunion, that we do something. Yeah, got to
get all these people together. I mean, we've had 109 chances to try, so we'll try.
Well, we've got the 30th anniversary of the film coming up before too much longer.
Yeah, I know.
So if everybody takes their vitamins and exercises properly, avoid in between meal snacks and all that, we can hope for the best. And but yeah, that would be great to have everybody together at maybe the El Capitan or up.
Or how about at Bigelow's? How about down there at Santa Maria?
Yeah, Santa Maria. I don't think they'd mind. And I think Hal knows enough people in the air show business that we might be able to talk some folks that flew some airplanes back.
We could get a lot of great people together.
That would be fun.
I think if we had a few bucks.
Yeah.
Well,
but hey.
Kickstarter.
We've got,
Are you
yeah,
kidding?
we've got
There's
time.
so many people who love this film. I'd fund it in a minute, and your buddy Mike can bring in any props that we need. Right?
We could probably redo the whole movie.
Yes, the Mike Bruno traveling show.
Yeah.
Yes, get that bucket of oranges out there. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, keep for people that are joined with us on all the different social media. Please keep in touch and stay subscribed to our iTunes. We may have some. We will have some in the future, I'm sure. Don't know when, but just keep checking your iTunes app, and every once in a while you might see a new episode show up.
Yeah.
In the 110 series.
It's the 110 series.
Post-production.
Post-production work, yeah, that's
exactly.
right. The after-credits special.
After-credit scenes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the Excitement in the Air, the TV special, which if we could get a really good copy of that, boy,
Yeah.
that would be a fun one to go through.
Yeah.
Even if it was a single episode, to just go through the whole thing.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, what's out there is so blurry and so muddy.
That would not be a bad one to do live somewhere with a certain fin head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll see. We'll see what we can do.
Like a rap party.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. We need a rap party for this Rocketeer Minute.
Okay, we'll work on this. You may be our social coordinator here, Amy.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes. But for people who want to keep in touch, we are always available on all the usual social media. You can find us, of course, on Twitter, Rocketeer Minute. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rocketeer Minute. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but you can go and subscribe. Keep subscribed at iTunes or Google Play. Type in Rocketeer Minute and hit subscribe, and you'll keep in touch with us. Visit us always at the big site, rocketeerminute.com, where we'll have updates and maybe something about that sequel that we keep getting promised. So we'll see what happens. So join us here tomorrow and the next day for the final two regular episodes of the Rocketeer Minute. So until next time, over and out.
Go get him, kid.